We trekked for a month along the border of Afghanistan and Tajikistan, literally in the middle of nowhere. There'd be a beautiful turquoise lake at the head of the valley and it'd be covered in rubbish. And that's when I was like, this problem's actually way bigger than anyone realizes. I said to myself, I'm gonna make this my life's mission now to try and solve this global waste problem. To solve this big complex problem, we need to just break it down into really bite-sized chunks. And really all we have to do is two things. To be honest with you, it nearly killed me. 2 a.m. calls with factories in China, 10 p.m. call in France, get in the car and drive to the Central Coast. It was one of the most stressful moments of my life. There's been multiple times in this business where I've nearly walked away. A lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and no clear path. But this project has just taught me to like get punched in the guts, take 5 minutes on the ground, and then get up and dust yourself off and go again.
Hear the stories, learn the proven methods, and accelerate your growth and future through entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Foundr Podcast with Nathan Chan.
All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming down to our studio, doing this. As I was saying offline, it's always awesome to do interviews in person. So talk us about this amazing business you've built, ZeroCo. How did you get started? You embarked on like an 18-month journey around the world before I kind of figured out this is the problem you want to solve about ZeroCo. So talk us through.
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, we make personal care and home cleaning products. So stuff you use every day at home, like hand wash and body wash and deodorant and shampoo and conditioner. And we deliver it to you in the world's first paper-based refill. It's got 97% less plastic than anything you can buy at the shops or online. And then we use the proceeds from the sale of those products to go and fund ocean cleanups. So I've got a full-time operation doing cleanups now. We've removed 45 million water bottles from the ocean.
Wow. So
that's ZeroCo in a nutshell. And in terms of the journey to get here, as you said, like before ZeroCo, I had a previous business. It was a winemaking brand called Cake Wines. I sold it in 2018. And my now wife, Alyssa, and I decided we were going to take like a little mini retirement and go on this big crazy trip around the world and just forget about like startup life and business and the world for a while. And the brief for the trip was like, we want to go to the most wild, crazy places on the planet. And so we literally bought an atlas one day and started looking at the map for countries that we'd never heard of before. And then when we like found a country we never heard of, we started researching. We're like, what's the most crazy place within that crazy place that we could go to? And so we sketched this big overland trip around the world basically, and ended up spending like 18 months trekking and hiking and living in a tent through some like crazy wild places. And it was during that trip that I became aware of the severity of the global waste problem. Like a couple of highlights, we trekked for a month along the border of Afghanistan and Tajikistan, like literally in the middle of nowhere in this place called the Wakhan Valley. And it's where the Himalayas end and the Tian Shan Mountains begin. The valley's maybe 100 meters wide. One side you've got 6,000 meter peaks, the other side you've got 5,000 meter peaks. That's Afghanistan 50 meters away, that's Tajikistan 50 meters away. And we trekked for about a month through this valley and like literally in the middle of nowhere, no human civilization. And multiple times we'd kind of go up out of the valley into like a side valley, and we'd be 4,000 meters above sea level, and there'd be a beautiful turquoise lake at the head of the valley and it'd be covered in rubbish. And you just think, how's this stuff even getting there? And there were just moment after moment after moment on this trip in the middle of nowhere. And that's when I was like, holy crap, this problem's actually way bigger than I realized. And I think anyone realizes, right? Because when you go to like dense population centers, busy cities in developing countries particularly, you see rubbish, right? And you expect to see rubbish. But when you go out literally into wilderness and you see it there, it really affected me, to be brutally honest. And it was during that trip that I just said, I'm going to try and do something about this problem. It feels like there's not enough people working on this problem. And as woefully unqualified as I was at the time, and probably still am to this day, that's what I said to myself. I'm going to make this my life's mission now to try and solve this global waste problem. And that's what I've been doing every day for the last 4 and a bit years.
Yeah, so talk us through. So you come back from this trip. How'd you get started, right? Because so many people, they start with a dream. The best way to start with a problem, looking how do you solve this problem, but how'd you work out the products? What was the first product? Talk me through.
So when I came back, I was completely agnostic about what the business was actually going to do. Like, I guess the insight I came back with is to solve this big complex problem, we need to just break it down into really bite-sized chunks, like at a very philosophical level to solve the global waste problem. And really all we have to do is two things. We have to reduce the amount of plastic that we're buying and throwing away in our homes, because that's the source of the problem.
Yep.
And then we've got to go and get all of the plastic out of the ocean and rivers and beaches around the world. So I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I've got no idea like what the products are going to be or what the actual business is going to do, but it's going to do those two things.
Yep.
And so then I came back and I actually moved back in with my parents because I hadn't had a house for 2 years and I spunked all my money that I made selling my last business traveling around the world.
You spent it all?
Most of it.
Why?
Not well, because I was overseas for like 18 months having a great time. And so then I moved back into my parents' house. I was 35 at the time or something, like literally moved back into my childhood bedroom.
Yeah.
I had a bit of cash left from the trip. All of that went into this business.
Yep. Can you share how much?
Yeah, there's about 100 grand.
Yep, okay.
So I had 100 grand back left in the bank account.
Yep.
And I put it all in to start this business.
Yep, okay.
And I started going down to the supermarket was the first thing I did, because I'm like, where's all this plastic coming from? It's coming from the supermarket. I'm just going to go and walk around the supermarket and like watch what people are buying and just get a bit of a feel for like, where's all this plastic coming?
Yep.
And so then like the very first iteration of the idea was I was going to try and build a food business that had reusable packaging, because I'm like, this is where the bulk of the plastic's coming from. So like a closed loop kind of model where you'd buy some food in a piece of packaging, you'd use it, you'd send the packaging back, it'd get cleaned and refilled.
Yep.
The more I looked into the food space, the more I realized, number one, the margins are terrible in food in the supermarket. It's going to be really hard to scale and make money. And then number two, like the regulations around food packaging are wild for obvious reasons, right?
Yep.
And so it felt like it was going to be way too complex to solve the problem and scale from my bedroom, my childhood bedroom with this into that category. So then I started spending more time down the like far end of the supermarket, the last 3 aisles where all the personal care and home cleaning products are sold, right? And that was my second big aha moment on this journey, where I was like, oh my goodness, like if you just look at these 3 aisles alone, it's floor to ceiling, wall to wall, single-use plastic. Yep. And there's been basically no innovation in the category for decades, right? From both a product and a packaging perspective.
Yes.
And so then I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go and work out how to build a personal care and home cleaning brand, and I'm going to solve the plastic problem in this category. So that was literally how it started.
Yeah. And so you started that journey around 2019.
Correct.
You did the Kickstarter campaign, it was around 2020, right?
Yep.
Was that pre or post-COVID?
So the Kickstarter campaign itself was pre-COVID.
Okay.
And then we got smashed by all of the stuff that was COVID.
Yes.
So I guess the context there was like, the next kind of insight I had was what we're really trying to do here is build this community of people who care about the planet. Like that's the heart and soul of this business that we're building. It's a community.
Yes.
And so I just said to myself, if we're trying to build a community, let's go and build a community from day one. Let's go out and do a crowdfunding campaign and tell people this is the idea.
Yep.
We want you to be part of it. So that led us to doing a Kickstarter campaign.
Yep.
I'd never done one before.
Yep.
Was a complete novice.
Yep.
It ended up being wildly successful.
Yep.
But then literally 4 months after we did our Kickstarter campaign, that thing called COVID happened.
Yep.
And I don't know if you can remember or the listeners can remember, but those early days of COVID were crazy. Like global supply chains just went into meltdown. We told all of our customers we'd be delivering in 6 months. And then all of our suppliers were like, you're not getting anything for at least 12 months. So we're like, okay, cool. And so that was one of the big learnings early on this journey, was around like building community and being radically transparent about the stuff that you're going through as a business. And so we just started communicating really, really clearly to all our customers, like all the stuff that was going on and what we were doing to solve it. And it became this real kind of rallying cry for our community, because they just like totally rallied around us and got these big complex problems that we were facing because of COVID. So yeah, then it ended up being a whole year until we first started shipping the product. So it wasn't until like late 2020 that we officially started getting product out into the world.
Yeah, so there's a bit I want to unpack there, because you didn't just do a crowdfunding campaign. This was the most successful crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter in Australia for that year.
It was, yeah.
And you raised basically $750,000 and it went gangbusters.
It did.
So if we rewind for a second, you had the 100,000 that you put into the business. How did you find your manufacturer? How did you work out what products you went to market with? How long did that take? Talk us through that, because that's the part that gets people so tripped up. And it's the part that is so intimidating. It's so scary.
Yeah.
Where'd you find your manufacturer? Like, talk us through that stuff.
Yeah. So the first thing we did was we went and got a chemist, to like a formulator, to start building the formulations, because that's the start of everything, right? Like without amazing product, there's no point having a business. So I literally just started like trawling LinkedIn and the internet and just like hunting for Australian formulators that had expertise in personal care. Had a bunch of meetings, a lot of them went nowhere, ended up finding the right person. Which then led to a contract manufacturing relationship, basically. So it was just a case of like trial and error and 100 conversations. It's a classic kind of startup hustle mentality, right? One door closes, you kick down the next door until you get a yes kind of thing. So that's basically how that all happened. And that was probably 6 months from memory, like just to get that process in place, get the formulator, get the manufacturer, and then it was another 12 months to do all the product formulation and testing and whatever.
And how did you know which was the right manufacturer, chemist? Any lessons you can share there? Yeah,
so I think one of the things that we did, I think, really well in the early days was we sat down and thought really, really hard about the type of business that we wanted to build, and like built some really basic principles around each part of the business. I read the book Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard, founder of Patagonia. And that kind of became a bit of my Bible for like how to just think strategically but keep it simple. And so we just wrote out some like core values around product and marketing and customer service and supply chain. And we just have leaned into those values throughout the whole time. And they helped us just really formulate a tight brief to a formulator, you know, and with us not knowing anything about product formulation, but we knew like these are the values that we want to build products around. So sustainability, no nasty products, no products that are bad for people or for the planet, locally sourced, locally manufactured. So we knew like the values that we wanted to build around. And then it was a case of explaining that vision to a whole bunch of formulators until we found someone that got it, was aligned and could do what we wanted to do, basically. And where did you end up finding your manufacturers to do the first run? So they're in Australia, on the central coast of New South Wales, just north of Terrigal. They had been, were our contract manufacturer for the first 4 years of our business. We've literally only just changed manufacturers now as a result of this new product innovation and pivot that we've been working on. And so they were great partners for us. They were very understanding that like, hey, this is a little startup and we're just trying to get this thing off the ground. But then once we did this big Kickstarter, I think they started to get, you know, really buy into the vision of what we were trying to achieve, which was great. Like the Kickstarter did a lot of good for us, other than just like getting some funding and some customers in the door. It gave us some credibility. It gave investors confidence to then come and invest in the business. It gave contract manufacturers some confidence. It just kind of built a level of confidence, I guess, around the business that most startups don't have when you're just starting out, you know, in your bedroom and got a website and you're selling some stuff. So talk me through, I guess, you had the 100 grand, you found your chemist, you found your formulators, your manufacturer. What was your MOQ and how much money did you need to raise to go, you know what, I'm onto something? And how long did it take to prepare the Kickstarter? Because a lot of, like, I've interviewed the founder of Indiegogo, and I never forget what she said to me. It was kind of cool. So I was telling you offline, we raised a couple $100 grand for our quick Kickstarter product, which is just a coffee table book. And I did like some recon. So I did a crowdfunding magazine edition, and I interviewed some top campaigns to learn. And I interviewed the founder of Indiegogo. And she said, and she was the one that actually, Indiegogo was the first to conceptualize crowdfunding, and then Kickstarter kind of came along and kind of took that headwind. But she said to me, the number one thing I can tell you, Nathan, is do not go on these crowdfunding platforms just to beg and just to try and get some money for your product. Let the community decide if your product needs to exist. Do not beg, and the market will tell you if it needs to exist. But in of that, you still need to be good at marketing. Like a good crowdfunding campaign
from my experience, you need to spend at least 3 to 6 months to do it right. How long did it take you? Talk us through that. How much you need to raise? Like, talk me through some of those mechanics.
Yeah, so I can't remember what our initial MOQs are.
Yep.
But I had in my head I needed $1 million.
Yep.
Like that was the number that I knew I needed to get this off the ground, to get all the products built out, to get the website launched, to get this thing to market.
Yeah.
And I initially went and started talking to investors first. It was my first port of call, and turn down.
Yeah.
Which is then why we went and said, because the plan was we'll go get some investors first, then we'll go and do a crowdfunding campaign, and then we'll go and get some bigger investors once we've kind of proven out the concept.
Yeah.
And then not being able to get access to any kind of angel investors up front, we just said, okay, let's go and do the Kickstarter.
Yep.
I can't remember exactly how long it took, but it wasn't a long time. It might have been 3 months or 6 months or something. Yep. And I was a complete novice. Like I'd never done one before. I've never done one since. I've done one Kickstarter campaign in my life, so I am by no means an expert at all.
Yeah, but it's all about the video, man.
Yeah, it's about the story.
Yes.
It's about the story, right? Yeah. And so again, we just had these really succinct principles that we were going to build this business around, and we just lent into that. And one of those is radical transparency. Yeah. And so that was the guiding principle for this Kickstarter campaign. I just said, I'm going to go and film a video. I'm going to do it in my parents' kitchen. Yeah. I'm going to tell people who I am and this problem that I've uncovered and what I'm going to try and do to solve it. And it was just real and vulnerable, and it wasn't like flashy. We weren't trying to do anything, crazy production. It was one of my friends shot it on his camera.
Yeah. And
it was just real. Yeah. And I think it just resonated with people. And that was one of the key things that led to the success of the campaign.
Yes.
I think also there was a lot of luck involved, right? And I think I always pay homage to luck because you need luck in any startup, right? I think a lot of founders don't pay enough respect to how much of a role luck plays in your journey. And so for us, we launched our Kickstarter campaign literally a couple of weeks after the end of the first War on Waste TV series, which was the top rating TV show in Australia. We had no idea this show was happening at the time. And it just so happened that there was this massive national TV program on the ABC talking about this massive waste problem. And then a month later, we come along and be like, hey, you've heard about this waste problem. We're working on a solution. So we tapped in at the right moment where there was a cultural movement happening and no competitors. Like there was nobody talking about the waste problem in our category when we launched this thing. So I think it was a combination of like values and storytelling and luck, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah. And so what was the minimum
that we set for the Kickstarter?
Yeah.
We set a target of 250.
Yep. Okay. So you basically tripled. But then there's a post, right? There's a post, you can do your little fancy tricks with those tools and
correct.
Get a little bit more, and then post, people are still waiting in lieu. So I'd assume you probably actually ended up hitting your $1 million target.
We did, yeah. So we had, I think from memory, it was about 7,500 customers that backed the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And then because it ended up taking us 12 months to get to market, we actually had our website ready to go like 6 months in.
Yes.
So then we launched the website and had a pre-sale for that next 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I think when we launched, we had about 12,500 orders at that stage, is my fuzzy memory.
Yes.
Which brought with it all of its own challenges, right? Like 12,500 orders to ship on day one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite a roller coaster, the early days of ZeroCo.
Yeah. Okay. And then so what products did you launch with? Did you have one hero product? What's your recommendations there? Did you have a range?
Yeah,
talk me through.
That's such a good question. And it's something that I debate almost every day on this journey.
Yes.
So we launched with, I think we had 10 products to launch, because our whole hypothesis was we're going to go and try and solve this problem in your home in as many places as possible. So we had things like laundry liquid and dish liquid and hand wash and body wash, multi-purpose cleaner. We basically had like an essentials kit for the stuff you use almost every day in your bathroom, in your laundry and in your kitchen. And that was the box that we sold at Kickstarter. And there's pros and cons to having a bigger product range versus a smaller product range, right? And I think what we found for us is that it enabled the business to scale really quickly because we had a bigger AOV. Yes. And also because the products that we make, you literally use them every day. It enables us to create a bigger lifetime value on the returning orders. Yes. But it also comes with a whole bunch of challenges, right? Because you've got more products to manage, more SKUs to manage, more warehouse to manage, more raw materials to manage, all of that stuff. And you can't pay as much attention to 10 products as you can to one. Like it's just the nature of reality, right? If you've got one product, you're focused on one product.
Correct.
So I don't know what the right answer is, to be honest. And if I had my time again, I don't know if I would have launched one product or 10 products. I debated every single day.
But it all worked out.
It all worked out.
Yeah. Okay, so you said that after the Kickstarter and the success, that's when you were able to, I guess, get investors to really start taking you a little more seriously. Talk me through that process. How much did you end up raising on top of?
Yeah. So then one of the tricky things with the Kickstarter was because it was so successful, it meant we actually needed more money to get it to market because we had to buy 3 times the amount of raw materials that we, thought we were going to need. And so then I think after we'd done the Kickstarter, I reached back out to a whole bunch of investors that had said no previously. And now with some runs on the board, like a pretty good success story from 1 month of pre-orders, those conversations totally changed, right? And so then we were able to raise $1 million from an angel network.
Yes.
Who are still all the major shareholders of the business. They're on my board.
And that a network here in Australia?
In Australia,
Okay.
So from Adelaide, actually, of all unusual places. So my previous wine business that I had was based out of Adelaide.
Yes.
I called a friend from the wine industry and said, do you know anyone, investors that have invested in startups in your network? He introduced me to a guy called Rob Chapman, who's the ex-CEO of St. George Bank, based in Adelaide. I caught up with him for a coffee one morning in Sydney. We both happened to be in Sydney. He said, great, I love it. After half an hour, come to Adelaide and we'll put a table of people together and we'll try and raise $1 million. And it was that simple. We went down, we didn't even have a presentation. I just sat around a table like this and just talked to people about who I was, what my background was, the vision for the business, the success we'd had, and a week later we had $1 million. So it was just it was quite a crazy moment to have these 2 big things back to back. And then, then we were away, essentially.
So talk me through, I guess, those supply chain issues. How did you work through it? How did you keep your backers under control and happy? Dude, when I got into the crowdfunding community, I felt like I need to support other projects, and I supported a range of projects. And all of them have been delivered except one, and they still send updates. And this is literally 8-9 years ago. It's coming on 10 years.
Wow.
It was a table you saw we have a nice table tennis table. It's a French table tennis table. Competitive, it's a competitive one, grade one. And I got a robot. I'm still waiting 8-9 years, right? Insane. They are still sending updates, right?
Wow.
So how did you, I know how it can get. So how did you manage that? How did you work through those supply chain issues?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing with our backers, we just lent into this radical transparency thing. And to be honest with you, before doing ZeroCo, I never was the face of a business. I had 2 businesses previously, and I was behind the scenes. I was just running the show. The brand lived its own life. But when I started ZeroCo, I realized if we're going to build this community and it's all about doing good in the world, we're going to need a spokesperson to be the figurehead for this mission, right? And so I reluctantly started putting myself out there on social media. I didn't even use social media myself personally. And I just started shooting videos and just being real, right? And we lent into that when these issues started to happen around COVID. And it got to the point where I was just sending an email every single week to all of our backers, and I just literally tell them here's all the crap that went down this week, here's how I'm feeling, here's what we're doing, I'll get back to you when the next crazy thing happens. And it was really powerful learning because I started to know these people and they started to know me, and there was an actual relationship that we built that was real. It wasn't this faceless company that's doing this thing. It was just this guy living in his parents' house trying to launch this thing. And so the more that we lent into that, the more we realized we were building a community, people were rallying around us. So that was the main thing for that. I just kept putting it all out there, wearing my heart on my sleeve. And then with the supply chain stuff, to be honest with you, it nearly killed me. Like there were 2 a.m. calls with factories in China where we were making some stuff, and then a 10 p.m. call in France where we were making some stuff, and then get in the car and drive to the Central Coast to oversee stuff, and then testing products. And it was one of the most stressful moments of my life, to be honest. And because it had ballooned so quickly, like the volumes that we were talking about, the amount of product, it was all big scale stuff. And so, yeah, it was just literally a case of just kind of persevering, I think, right? Like just persevering and shoveling through the mud every day until you get to the nugget of gold. And then, you get that little bit of gold and gives you adrenaline boost and you keep pushing, basically. So it was just, hard work and perseverance to get us there.
Yeah. So after 2 years, you had a pretty loyal customer base of 70,000 people. Yep. That's pretty large. How have you continually fostered that? You've talked about radical transparency. Were there any tools that you used? A newsletter, a Facebook group, a circle group? Is there anything?
Yeah. There was nothing fancy, to be honest with you. It was just like all of the basic simple stuff. So I would, even once we launched, I continued to send an email to every customer once a month, just being like, hey, here's an update. Like, here's what we're working on. Just keeping people in the loop. I made sure that I was in socials a lot and just talking about the product, talking about the mission. And then probably like 18 months into the business, we really got serious about this ocean cleanup side of the business.
Yes.
Which at the start was something that we were just doing ourselves. Like literally our initial team, we'd go to the beach and we'd do beach cleanups on the weekend.
Yes.
And then probably 18 months in, we're like, we want to get really, really serious about this part of our business. And that's when we started building our own team. Like we started employing people to do cleanups.
Yeah, wow.
And then I started like going to all of these major cleanups and getting in front of the camera and showing people the scale of this problem. And the more that we've done that, the more people have gotten engaged, because like some of the content that we're shooting now is brutally confronting, like me waist deep in rubbish as far as the eye can see in a river that you can't see any water. And again, it's just like the more real and vulnerable we can be, and just showing people this is the extent of the problem, and we care about it so much that I'm here doing it. Like this is not just some face value thing that we do for marketing. Like we're serious about solving this problem. I'm getting on a plane and traveling around the world doing these cleanups, and I just think a combination of all of those things has built this trust and this community around us. We take our shareholders, we take customers to cleanups, we get people involved in these things, and we just reinforce it. Like every time you buy one of our products, we are removing 10 water bottles from the ocean on your behalf. It's a really direct link. And it took us a while to get to this 10 for 1 promise, to be honest. That wasn't part of the business model at the start.
Yes.
But since we've come to that articulation, it's just supercharged our messaging and our impact.
Hey guys, I really hope you're feeling inspired from today's interview. Now, the truth is, all successful e-commerce founders started from zero, with a spark of an idea and a whole lot of determination. But let's be real, building or growing an e-commerce business is no walk in the park. And that's where Foundr Plus comes in, which I'm really excited to share with you. It's a culmination of a decade worth of work at Foundr. So if you're feeling stuck in your e-commerce business, you're lacking confidence to move forward, or you're worried about making costly mistakes or not knowing how to grow your business, Foundr Plus is here to support you on your journey. You get access to a customized learning pathway with proven frameworks from successful e-commerce founders for fast results, incredible programs, a supportive community, weekly live mentorship, exclusive savings on startup tools, and 24/7 real human support. Try Foundr Plus today for just $1 for 7 days so you can accelerate your business goals. Visit foundr.com/start $trial or click the link in the description to claim your trial. All right, now let's jump back in the show. So can you talk me through how you got to that?
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people, like sustainability is a massive, massive trend, and the consumer is more interested in sustainability more than ever. And I once met a really, really, really savvy founder where he's behind the scenes, but he's behind massive, massive brands, and he has a thing where every brand that he creates, there has to be an element of social good. It has to be good for the environment. Like it has a really strong impact. Physical product, similar space.
Yeah.
And I asked him the question, like, why do you do this? Is it a commercial thing? And how does it all work out from a commercial side? And he said, like, look, honestly, Nathan, what I've found is, one, it's just great to have some really strong purpose and why behind each brand that we create, and it makes it more fun and it's more impactful. But what we've also found is that the extra money that you spend on the administering or being able to deliver on that social good piece, it basically works itself out because you get a bit of a boost. Like, let's say it's an extra 10% cost, then you probably get an extra 10% boost in marketing. So it's net negative. Like it's neutral. Yeah. So it's worthwhile doing, and why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So talk me through that piece, because like I said, a lot of brands are moving in that direction. Yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah. So the thinking went like this. The first thing we did was we took a bit of a kind of purist approach to doing good, and we said we don't want to do a profit model, which is what lots of like social enterprises do. They say we'll donate X% of profit to doing something. The reality of that is that most startups fail. Most startups don't ever generate a profit.
Yeah.
And it just felt a bit disingenuous to me personally to be trading off that, knowing that I'm probably not going to get to profitability for 3 years.
Yes.
So we said what we're going to do is we're going to bake doing good into the cost of goods of our business. Yep. So there's literally a line item in our unit economics that is ocean cleanups.
Yep.
And that's kind of evolved over the years, and we weren't quite sure like how much should we actually be investing in these cleanups as we go, because we weren't profitable. We weren't profitable for the first 3 years of our business, right?
Yep.
And we were just experimenting. We're like, let's go and see. Let's put $50,000 into a kitty and see how much that gets us.
Yep.
Let's put $100,000 into the next kitty and see how far that gets us. That's like last year we invested nearly $300,000 in cleanups.
Yep.
And we were always like challenging ourselves of like, how much should we actually be like, what's the right number? How do we build some kind of system and process around this? And so that's when we, like, probably 18 months in, or probably 2 years in, once we had some real data around how much does it cost to do a big scale cleanup, we were then able to like work backwards and just say, well, this is how many products we sold in the last 12 months. This is how much rubbish we collected in the last 12 months. We just worked out the maths between like sales versus cleanups and what we think we can continue to scale at. And that's where it landed on this 10 for 1 promise, which has simplified everything, because the message is now literally every time you buy a Zero Code product, you are funding 10 water bottles being removed from the ocean. Yeah. Every single product. Doesn't matter what the product is. Doesn't matter whether it's a $2 product or a $50 product. Every product, 10 water bottles removed.
Yeah, and you take that from your average order value, of course.
We take it from average order value.
Yep.
And what it's allowed us to do is then just go and have a budget at the start of every year that we say, well, we're pretty much going to sell as much as we did last year.
Yep.
Like, we're a growing business. We're not going to sell less.
Yep.
Therefore, we know this is how much money we're going to allocate to cleanups, and we can go and build a full 12-month plan around these are the projects we're going to go and do. And if sales exceed forecast, then we've got a kitty that we can go and do more cleanups, essentially.
Yeah, got you. And is there a reason that you didn't partner with another organization? You've actually built your own team?
Yeah, well, we did to begin with. So, to begin with, we were doing it ourselves.
Yep.
Then the next step was like, let's go and work with some not-for-profits.
Yep.
So we did some projects in Indonesia, we did some projects in Bali, and we did some projects in Egypt.
Yep.
And they were great. Like, we had a great relationship with all those people. We collected a bunch of rubbish. But what we found is that we were not getting the level of transparency that we were comfortable with.
Yep.
So things like even just being able to capture really good content at those cleanups and showing people like, this is the before, this is the after.
Yes.
And then getting really robust data around how much rubbish did we actually remove.
Yes. To deliver on the promise.
To deliver on the promise.
Yes.
And so we like persevered with that for probably a year. And we just got to a point where like, if we're going to get really serious about this, we're going to be investing hundreds of thousands of dollars every year in this. We've got to go and do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And so then we literally went and built a team in the Philippines.
Yep.
So we have a full-time team in the Philippines now. 13 guys work for us.
Yep.
We're doing cleanups all the time in the Philippines.
Yep.
And then this coming year, we're going to go and do our first big global cleanup projects as well. So we've got one planned in Bosnia.
Yep.
We've got one planned in Ghana.
Yep.
We've got one planned in India.
Yep.
And one in Central America.
Yep.
On top of our 8 to 10 monthly cleanups in the Philippines.
Yep.
And some cleanups here in Australia as well. So next year, the goal is we're going to try and remove 30 million water bottles from the ocean.
Yeah, wow.
Which is as much as we've done in the last 3 years.
Wow.
So we're scaling this cleanup operation really, really quickly.
Yeah, and it's one thing to clean up, but it's another thing to actually remove. That's like how does that work?
Getting it out of there.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it depends on the location, to be completely honest. So when we're doing cleanups in Australia, it's mostly beach cleanups.
Yep.
That's literally a team on the beach,
Yep.
hands and shovels and rakes and
Yep.
bags. Like it's that primitive. And then in the Philippines, it's a case by case basis. So like sometimes we're in a river, and so we'll have boats.
Yes.
Sometimes it'll be on a beach that's so crazy polluted that we'll have backhoes and excavators and dump trucks in there.
Wow.
Sometimes it's out in the ocean. We're in boats. We've done a couple in Sydney, and like we've scuba dived to the bottom of Sydney Harbour and had a team down there scuba diving.
Yes.
So it's really like a case by case basis, but most of the time it's manual labour.
Yep. Got you. And where do you dispose of the rubbish?
Yeah, that's also a bit of a case by case basis. So it depends on where we are and what facilities are available.
Yes.
So where we can, we recycle what we can.
Yes.
Where we can't, it goes to landfill. And like the brutal reality is some of these locations, particularly in the Philippines, will be on islands where there is no recycling facility on the entire island. And so our view when we go to those kind of locations is there's two options here. One, we leave it in the ocean where it's breaking down into microplastics and going into the food stream, getting eaten by fish that get eaten by you. That's not cool. Or we take it out of there and we put it in a hole in the ground. And if they're the two options, then putting it in a hole in the ground is the least shit of those two options. Yeah. So where we can, we do what we can. Where we can't, we do what we have to.
Yeah.
It is basically the truth of it.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. So talk me through, as the company has grown, how you've scaled your operations. Because this business, can you talk us through numbers, or what can you share, like the scale of this business? Because you guys are growing super fast.
Yeah. So we've actually gone through this crazy pivot over the last 18 months where we've put the brakes on our growth, to be completely honest with you.
Yep.
As we've redeveloped our entire product range from the ground up, an entirely new packaging system, which we can talk to if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, should we go there?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, okay. So the first iteration of ZeroCo was a closed loop model where you had a forever bottle that you keep at home, and then a plastic refill pouch. We'd send you the pouch, you'd empty it into the bottle, you'd send the pouch back to us, we would clean it, refill it, and we'd send it out to another customer. That was the business model for the first 2.5 years of the business. We then started to realize that the business that supply chain had a whole bunch of fundamental flaws with it. We got some experts to come in, some environmental experts and some data experts to come in and like pull this whole thing apart. And what we found was pretty shocking, to be completely honest with you. Like, it did a lot of good. We cleaned and refilled 250,000 pouches, pulled 20 million water bottles out of the ocean at that point. But what we found was that the carbon footprint of shipping empty pouches back to us, like every single order that we would send out, there'd be a reverse logistics piece to that. So double the carbon footprint.
Yes.
We were then running a purpose-made facility to clean the pouches. We were using water to do that. That's got a carbon footprint and a water footprint. And then we found that only 43% of customers were sending their pouches back to us. So we built this system which was like perfect in a perfect world. And we found that we live in an imperfect world. Even though we were providing free return shipping for everyone, it just became a job, right? A job to do. You got to go to the post office and send your pouches back. It was inconvenient. And so then at that point in time, we said, okay, we need to rethink this whole business model. We need to work out how do we make this even more convenient for the customer and better for the planet. So we went on this massive research and development project, working with companies all around the world, working with research institutions, working with university academics to try and build the most sustainable packaging system for liquid personal care and cleaning products. We were looking at seaweed and algae and hemp and mold and fiber and all of these crazy different materials. And where we've landed on is some Australian technology, which is a paper-based refill. It's 97% less plastic. So instead of having a reverse logistics model, we send you the paper refill. It slides inside the bottle now, so there's no decanting or pouring. It's really simple. And then when you're done, you can put it in your curbside recycling bin, gets recycled. We've done all the testing. About 90% of the paper material in the refill can get extracted during a recycling process in Australia and get turned back into another product. So we basically rebuilt the whole thing. We also moved to concentrated formulations on some of our products. So instead of previously shipping 2 liters of laundry liquid around the country, we concentrated that product down into a 500 ml formula, same number of washers, same performance, just with a quarter of the liquid. So instead of shipping 2 liters, we're now shipping 500 mils, which is 75% less freight emissions. So we pulled the whole business apart and we're like, what's all the stuff we've learned in 2 years? How do we make everything better? How do we make it better for the planet, less plastic, less carbon emissions, and more convenient for the customer? So we've been on that journey for like the last 18 months, and we've deliberately not been trying to scale the business. We've just been servicing our existing customers, getting this new product ready, and it literally launched a month ago. So yeah, we've been in this crazy journey where like scaled really quick, and then we put the brakes on deliberately, and now we're literally just about to put the foot back on the accelerator. We're going to be launching internationally next year, hopefully going into physical retail, like really doing all the things we set out to do at the start, but we're kind of blocked by this cumbersome supply chain that we built for ourselves. Yeah.
So can you talk us through what numbers you could share around customers, revenue, how far you've taken the business?
So we are now at about 120,000 customers here in Australia that are purchasing from us. Today, it's 99% of our business is direct to customer through zeroco.com. We have a few small retail relationships with independent retailers. But the plan is to radically scale the business and get into a lot more retailers, pharmacy, supermarket, specialty retail, those kind of things.
And mainly Australian customer base.
At the moment, 100% Australian. So we're not shipping overseas. We're not running ads anywhere. We're not acquiring customers anywhere other than Australia. The plan for next year is we're going to be launching into the European market, UK and Europe, and then the US after that, North America.
Got you. And you've raised $6 million from SquarePeg.
Correct.
Talk us through that strategic decision.
So I guess when we got to a point where the business was growing very quickly, we realized that if we want to take this in global, if we want to continue to grow this, we're going to need some more funding. We'd learned a lot from our Kickstarter days. We'd learned a lot from our first kind of angel investing round. And so we were very clear about the type of investor that we wanted and the type of money that we wanted to take into the business, and it needed to be completely values aligned and patient capital with a long-term horizon, because I'm not building this thing to get rich and flog it in 2 years' time. We're building this business to try and solve the global waste problem, and if it takes 30 years, it takes 30 years. If it takes 50 years, it takes 50 years, My view is we're going to try and build a really successful, profitable business, and the rest takes care of itself, basically. So with that in mind, we went and started talking to a whole bunch of investors. And I think from the success that we'd had, we were able to open some doors into VC land, which was really awesome, basically.
SquarePeg's an interesting one because I think of them usually, they're local, well-known, prominent Australian VC for everyone listening. I always think of them as more tech focused, right? And they invested in you guys. Was there any kind of learning curve or
I think for them, like the thing I've learned from having now worked with them, they've got a seat on my board. I've become really good friends with the kind of principal investor there, and they invest in really good businesses, right? And they invest in businesses that have got a great story, and we've got a great story, right? We had built a good business up to that point. We had a really great story, which was we're going to try and save the world, right? And so I think whilst historically they have invested in tech businesses, ultimately they invest in businesses that they believe can grow and become profitable and have a great story. They've been an amazing partner, to be honest. I was a little bit hesitant about taking VC money, to be completely honest, because I'd never done it before with any of my previous businesses. You hear horror stories, you hear of like disalignment between founders and VCs. You hear stories of founders getting kicked out of their businesses, all that stuff. And just at every turning point, they've been the exact opposite of that, which has been really amazing, to be honest.
It's one of those things, you hear those stories, but of course there's always another side of the table as well.
Totally. Founders don't just get kicked out because they're doing a great job, right? That doesn't happen.
Exactly. And you hear Steve Jobs and all these different stories, right? So I'm curious, talk me through, I guess you mentioned something really interesting. You said that fundamentally this VC, and this is a very, very well-renowned VC. I'm pretty sure they were early stage Canva, right?
Correct. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they were early stage Canva. So talk me through, like, you know, you said you guys have a good story.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to founders that are watching this, working on their product, working on their business? How do you, like, the money, like, what advice would you give to make sure you have a good story? You have an exceptional story and you're a very good storyteller.
Thank you.
Like, I'm sure plenty of people listening to this, even myself, really, really want to get behind what you're doing.
Yeah. I think it depends what stage of the journey you're at, I think, right? And again, I'm not an expert here. I'm just living this journey in real time and putting it out there. I think if you haven't started your business yet, or you're thinking about starting your business, it's that classic case of find your why, right? Like, before you go and start anything, work out what you're actually really trying to do. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And try and solve a big, important problem, because they're easy for people to rally around, right? Like, if you're just going to make another widget that people don't really need, then you're going to have to manufacture some story around it. And that's really hard. And it's really, can be really disingenuous really quickly, right? So I think if you're at the stage where you haven't yet started, try and solve a big problem that you can it's just a natural organic story around. If you've already started and you're working on a big problem, awesome. I think the next thing is to work out, how do you articulate that really succinctly? I think lots of founders and startups have a really difficult time explaining what they actually do. I'm always surprised when I go to, like, websites and I'll spend 10 minutes and I've got no idea what they actually, like, what do you do? Particularly in, like, tech and service, I find it all the time. Like, what are you actually trying to sell me here? So I think just taking some time, and I think about it like the pub test. Imagine you're just talking to your dad at the pub, like, who's got no idea about the thing you're going into. How do you just explain it in layman's terms? Do that, make it simple. Less is more. Don't get complicated. Just, like, 10 for 1. Every product we sell, we collect 10 water bottles from the ocean. That's it. It's really simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think just another thing, like with founders, I think you have to decide whether you're going to be the face of it or some kind of a face of the business. And if you are, you just have to lean into it.
Yeah.
And then I just think a bunch of other tall poppy stuff in Australia, right? Where you put yourself out there, you're trying to do something good, people are going to knock you for it. And so I had to learn the hard way, just to be like, ignore, delete, move on, kind of thing. Because I know what I'm trying to do. I know why I'm trying to do it. And so I'm just pushing ahead. But it can be confronting for founders when you put yourself out there in the public. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I think that's the moral of the story. It doesn't mean you shouldn't.
Yeah. And I think more than ever now, there is I'm hesitant to call it a trend, but it is becoming expected, right? That, you know, if somebody finds a brand, they're going to Google about
the founder,
the product, the brand. And more than ever now, there's this movement of founder-led brands.
Yeah.
Right? You know, TikTok, right? Somebody taking you on that journey, like showing the manufacturers, creating the product, getting feedback, taking people on the... There's almost a playbook for it now. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that wasn't really a thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So more than ever, I think the consumer is very interested and almost expecting to see who is the person behind it.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes sense, right?
It builds relationships.
Builds relationships, and it's real. Because I think people are just so sick and tired of corporate BS, particularly in the sustainability space, right?
Yeah.
Like, the world's biggest companies are the world's biggest polluters, and they're always talking about this thing they're going to do by 2050. And people are like, stop fucking BSing and show us what you're doing today. Like, 2050 is irrelevant if you're not doing something today. And they're faceless companies, and they're doing press releases, and there's no accountability. These big global behemoths. And so I think in the sustainability space, people want to see the real stuff, and they want to see the people who are doing it, and they want to see the work you're doing now. And so it can be really powerful if you do it, you know, authentically and for the right reasons. Yeah, no,
I agree. So talk to me about setbacks. other challenges that you want to share? Any good stories? We talked about stories. Any crazy, wild stories, setbacks? You know, people might look at you. You know, you've got this awesome business. You're doing a lot of good for the world. You raised a ton of money. You reinvented the business model. I know how painful that would have been.
Yeah.
You know, even for Foundr, we had to reinvent our business model, moving to subscription, membership, all these different things. I know how painful that is. But it's really looking like you guys are on the up. So talk me through like some of the hardest challenges.
Yeah. I feel like ZeroCo has just been one perpetual setback after another, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
It's been the hardest business I've ever done in my life. We've picked a incredibly big and complex problem that doesn't have a silver bullet solution. We have been innovating at the bleeding edge of technology from day one, trying to do things that no one in the world has ever done. Like this new paper-based refill system we've just launched. I 100% now understand why Unilever or Procter & Gamble or one of these big global companies haven't done it, because it's really hard, like impossibly hard almost. And so like literally at every juncture of this business, we've been faced with these big cataclysmic choices to make and decisions. And, you know, there's been multiple times in this business where I've nearly walked away, to be completely honest with you, because it's like a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and no clear path. Like when we decided we're going to build this new paper packaging system, we didn't know it was going to be paper. We just knew that we didn't want it to be plastic. And we knew that it had to be better for the planet. And so like we spent 2 years going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole, investing money, developing packaging solutions, to have them end up not working out, you know, after 12 months of product testing on them. And so I think the probably the most important skill that I've learned on this journey has been perseverance. And I think I'm inherently a bit of a stubborn person, but this project has just taught me to like get punched in the guts and take 5 minutes on the ground and then get up and dust yourself off and go again. So yeah, there's been so many things, like from the COVID thing at the very start of our business happening to investing 2 years building this business model and then deciding and uncovering that it's actually not the best solution for the planet and there's got to be a better way, to then exploring every possible opportunity under the sun from technology that doesn't yet exist, to now starting to ship these products to tens of thousands of customers around the country and things not going exactly according to plan because no one's ever filled up a papered cup with laundry liquid and shipped it around the world, right? Like it's never happened before. And so, yeah, some days I just feel like, oh my God, can we just have like a normal standard business for the next couple of weeks where we just everything's smooth sailing, it's all good. So yeah, there's been countless things that have gone wrong.
Yeah. And that's the journey. You know, one of my mentors once said to me, like, if these things aren't happening to you, you're probably not pushing hard enough. Do you agree?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that you need to, as a founder, get really comfortable with discomfort and being in a place where you are in over your head and you don't know what you're doing. Because if you're not exploring all and every opportunity in front of you, right? Because no one knows how to do something until you've done it. So
So the thing with your business is this balance of profit over purpose and having a sustainable model, because you have to keep raising money. And you said you were losing money for a long time before you were profitable. Like, talk me through that balance, right? Because that adds another layer of complexity into the cocktail, which a lot of founders usually don't have.
Totally.
Yeah.
So this is something I wrestle with every day of like, how much of my time and effort do I spend scaling up our cleanup operation and being intimately involved in that versus how much time do I spend and being intimately involved in scaling up our business? And they're intimately connected, right? Because we need to sell products to solve the problem in people's homes, because every time you buy a product, you're reducing waste at home, you're stopping it at source. But we also need to sell the products to fund the ocean cleanups. And so it's this perpetual like circle of interconnectedness. And to be honest with you, I have not found the right balance yet, to be honest. I think it ebbs and flows. Like there are times when we just need to knuckle down and focus on the product, like the moment we're in right now where we're shipping hundreds of thousands of products around the country for the first time to customers who've been waiting for a month because we had a pre-order, and we just got to focus relentlessly on like the customer experience and the product, get that done. And then, there'll be times where those things are humming and we can go and invest more time and effort in scaling the cleanup. So yeah, it's a never ending challenge.
Yeah. And when do you think, or how do you think you'll find that right balance?
Well, the goal that we're working towards is I've just built out a new senior leadership team in the business. I managed to convince some really experienced people from some awesome businesses that are much bigger than mine to jump ship and come and help me build this thing to the next stage. And the goal that we're working towards is I will be out of the day-to-day operations of the business. It might take 12 months for that to happen. And I'll be doing hopefully more of these things and going and talking to people about the problem that we're trying to solve, but also being at literally every single cleanup and trying to scale the content and get some virality around our cleanups to spread the word, basically. Yep. So we're in this interesting phase of me becoming more of a figurehead than the guy in the trenches doing customer service one day, and then down at the production line solving an issue on the production line, and then all of those things that you do as a founder. Yeah. And so it's exciting, but also daunting.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I'm going through a similar transition. So talk me through what is the next level
for the business. Yeah, so we the big goal here is we want to remove 1 billion water bottles from the ocean. We're at 45 million today, and so we've got some very hard numbers that we need to hit in order to get to that milestone. We've given ourselves a 5-year time frame to get to that 1 billion bottle target. That involves launching new products, launching new channels, so going into physical retail, and then launching new markets. So they're the 3 things that we're going to be focused on. At the moment, we're in 120,000 homes in Australia. We need to be in 1 million, right? Like, there's no reason we shouldn't be. There's 10 million homes in Australia.
Yep.
There's no reason 10 million, like 10% of those people, those homes, 1 million households, shouldn't be concerned about this problem and wanting to be actively involved in the solution. So that's the next big jump for us, is how do we get into 1 million homes?
Yep. Still big focus on Australia or international?
Yeah, so we're going to be launching into the UK and Europe middle of next year.
Yep.
And I think we're just taking a test and learn approach, right? We're going to launch, we're going to ship some product, we're going to run some ads, and we're going to see what happens.
Yep.
But we know that the future for this business is global, and I don't think we can get to the scale we want to get to in Australia alone. So
gotcha.
It is a global strategy now. Yeah.
And talk me through, I guess, any founders that are watching this right now that want to create a more purpose-led business, with a big part around sustainability, what advice would you give?
That's a really good question. I think one of the things that I've been saying recently to people is just start. Like, the reality of the sustainability space is that we face all of these mounting environmental problems around the world, right? And the only way we're going to solve those is if we get more people involved in building the solutions. And so if you've got an idea that's going to do something to solve one of these myriad problems with the environment, just start, because we need more people in the field today. And it doesn't matter if you don't have all the answers. I didn't have all the answers. I still don't have all the answers, but you just got to get started. Start small, start today.
Yep.
Is the sound bite.
Yeah. And talk me through sacrifices, because usually you would think that when somebody sells their business, even after traveling the world, you probably wouldn't go back to living at home with your parents at 35, with all due respect.
Yeah.
What sacrifices have you had to make up until this point to get where you are today?
Well, I think the first thing was moving back in with my parents at a moment when people don't do that at my age. Putting all of my life savings in that I had available, or the cash I had available. I had some other investments, but that was the cash I had available. Putting all of that into the business. And then I've become a dad during this journey. So 2 years ago, I had a daughter, Tilly.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been an amazing transformational experience, but as much as I try and be there for all of the moments, I'm not there for all of the moments because I'm in the Philippines doing a cleanup, or I'm down in Melbourne with our team down here. And so the thing that I've learned over this last 2 years of the business in particular is there's only so many plates you can juggle, and the less plates you have, the better you can juggle those plates. And so for me, I've just said, at this moment in my life, between now and when Tilly goes to school, I've got 2 plates essentially, which is my business and then my family. And that's all that I have time for. And so I don't do a lot of stuff outside of that. You know, my friendships have had to take a back seat to those 2 things. If I'm not at work, I'm at home playing with my daughter or being with my wife. On the weekends, that's what I'm doing. So like, I'm not sad about it. That's a conscious decision I've made, that they're the 2 most important things in my life for this next little period. And they're the 2 things that I'm going to focus all of my energy and effort on. And I think you just have to be brutal with your time as a founder, because that's the one thing, like, there's only a finite amount of time, right? There's 24 hours in the day. Where are you going to spend it? You have to spend it on the things that are the most important to you. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about time and time management. In the early days, what was that split? Like, what did that look like?
In terms of what I was doing in the business?
Yeah.
To be honest, at the start, it was just all hands on deck. And I was just doing whatever I needed to do that day, you know? Yeah. Excuse me. Sometimes it'd be customer service. Sometimes I'd be, you know, literally answering tickets in our customer service pool for a week if we had an overflow. Sometimes I'd be at the factory dealing with factory issues. Sometimes I'd be doing video editing and production stuff. It was just a mix of like whatever needed to be done, which I think is just, that's the nature of a startup, right? When you're in that early phase, you just need to get your hands dirty with everything. And then as the business has evolved, it's become more and more time on product, particularly with our product development team. And then these cleanups more recently. So they're kind of the big chunks of time that I'm spending now. As we've just started to relaunch, I'm spending a bit more time with the new marketing team. We basically rebuilt our whole marketing team as part of this relaunch of the business. So I'm spending a bit more time there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, last question, Mike. What advice would you give to early stage e-com founders going on the journey? Any questions that you wanted me to ask that I didn't ask, anything I didn't cover that you'd like me to cover right now?
I think one piece of advice, which I wish I had have gotten when I started this thing, was get into all of the tools on day one, even the stuff that you don't think you know anything about or you'll never be able to know anything about. Just get into it and just start learning from day one. So like Meta ads and Google Analytics and whatever customer service platform you're using, back end of Shopify, like whatever your tech stack is, just get deep in all of it and just learn from day one. Because it took me 12 months to learn all of that stuff, you know? And looking back, if I had just jumped in straight away, I would have probably sped up my learning journey. And so I think it's just like learn. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to jump in on stuff that you don't know how to do. Just try and learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can.
Well, thank you so much. We have to work towards wrapping up, but this has been an incredible interview. Thank you for coming down here, telling your story and all the incredible work you're doing. Congratulations on your success thus far. Look forward to watching your journey from afar.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you loved this episode, make sure to check out my interview with Emma Greed on how solving a problem she was so passionate about led to the creation of Skims and Good American.
And so I do think it's so much of it starts with like addressing things that bother you, that you find, you know, you've got to create a solution for, because, you know, at the end of the day, you've got to be passionate enough and sometimes crazy enough to go round and round and round to actually solve a problem.